Welcome in Around the Bases Extra Innings. Joel Goldberg, Dr. Shane Schaffer, and want to talk a little bit more. First off, encourage everybody to listen to the audio version of the podcast, and a lot of good discussion about what Shane and all of his people are doing over at Cingulate. I want to go on the personal side here, because when I look at your bio, University of Kansas, Rutgers, University of Chicago. Now, I never went to any of those institutions. However, I was born in New Jersey, more Philadelphia area, but not too far from Rutgers.
Oh, cool.
I went to junior high and high school in Chicago. Didn't go to the University of Chicago, but didn't live too far away. And of course, now I have a son at Kansas and we live here. So curious how those three unique places shaped you.
You know, I mean, I always tell people this, and just for anyone from Hayes watching, don't get mad at me, but I love the fact that I grew up in Hayes, Kansas. And I always tell people my future children will not have that same experience, because I've become just a kind of I love big cities. You know, I lived in New York City 15 years, and that's where I was when I was doing my postdoc with Rutgers, and then started working at Pfizer, Novartis, and Sanofi. Spent some time in Boston and Chicago, but at the end of the day, you know what, my heart was always a Midwestern one. And Kansas City was the place for me. You know, I tell people sort of a funny story. When I came back from New York, I lived in Leawood for 2 weeks. My parents were out there, and I was like, I got to get to the plaza. I got to get somewhere where I can hear some noise. But I love that Kansas City has so much to offer. Our city has just changed so much. I left in '99, came back in 14, and those 15 years, yep. This town it's night and day. And it's just such a great city, great people, hardworking folks, good people, great food, great entertainment. And I came back at the right time for the Royals, 2014 and 15. So I love being here. That's why I want to build Cingulate in Kansas City. We're a Kansas City company, and we want to bring pharmaceuticals back to the Midwest. We want to be the next Eli Lilly here in Kansas City.
Well, let's go a little bit along those lines. And the second question, as we round the bases, you talked a little bit briefly in the audio version of the podcast about Mr. K. Now, I wasn't around for Mr. K, but I say the name Kauffman Stadium every single night over and over again, or sometimes simply just the K.
Yeah.
An institution here. I can't tell you how many people I meet that say, well, back when I started at Marion Labs, or back when my father was at Marion Labs too. Yep. And I'm curious, just your thought on the legacy.
You know, what's so funny is my first job was at Marion Labs. It was called Herbst Marion Roussel. There's a mouthful. But so Marion Labs is what we all affectionately called it. And that was my first job in '96. I wish I had the chance to meet Mr. K, but he'd passed by then. So, but I did get a chance to sit at his desk, which was out at his museum out there, which is now down here by the plaza. He had two phones on there. One phone was a black phone. That was his Marion Labs phone. And then the red phone to Herc Robinson, the GM of the Royals. And just what I remembered was keep things clean, have your priorities. And that red phone was his passion. And it tells you the passion that really fuels it. I read a book every year, usually in January. It's his book called Prescription for Success. It's a fantastic read, but it talks about sort of his values and how he built Marion Labs into what it became. And sort of, you know, it's a big reason why I moved Cingulate from the East Coast to Kansas City. Selfishly, it's my adopted hometown. It's not Hayes, it's Kansas City. I love it. So family and friends here made it very simple, but also it happened here before. And as we went public, people were like, you're Kansas City-based pharmaceuticals? We've never heard of that. Well, here we are. And we're doing it, and we're excited about it, and we want to build our company here in this community.
All right, third question. We talked a little bit about Mr. K starting it really small, and you mentioned starting it in the guest room of your house. Take me to those early days, because I know those are never easy.
Yeah, I mean, so I was working in pharma at the time, and in order to start Cingulate, number one, I had to quit my job. So 2.5 years of zero salary was difficult, especially, you know, the savings went dry pretty quick, but it was also so much fun to see what we could build. And then bringing on a couple of, you know, everyone was unpaid for 2 years. Then we started bringing on a staff and raising capital. And, you know, really at that point is when I realized, you know, where do we want the future of this business to be? And that's why Kansas City was the choice. It was an easy one. And everyone supported the idea. We were sort of a disparate team in New Jersey, New York, Kansas City after I moved here, and Texas. But everyone's really embraced Kansas City. The whole company has. Our board of directors comes in often, and just really excited to be in town here. makes a big difference to be happy where you work.
No question about it. And I always say you can always go back and visit New York and
Yeah.
all those places.
I was there last week. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be there. Well, we were there in March for a little vacation and be back whenever we play the Yankees. I think it's July or August or something like that.
July. Yeah.
July, and then next year we get the Mets too. So it's fine. I love any chance I get to get to New York and all the places I get to go. It's pretty cool. Okay, last question, the walk off. I'll go a little bit more serious on this one too. And we touched on the podcast about the mental health aspect of this too, and hopefully you guys are getting that approval in 2025. But how hopeful are you, not just within your product, but just as far as where we're at or where we're going? Because I think we're all reminded on a regular basis about this mental health crisis in this country. And there's so much politics out there right now. There's so much bickering on this and that. And I think oftentimes the mental health piece can be used for advantages or arguments. But the reality, if you strip all that noise aside, is that, as I said during the podcast, everybody's dealing with it in some way. And it's scary. It's really, really scary, whether you're a parent like I am or not. How hopeful are you?
I'm actually really hopeful in a couple of ways. Number one, the stigma of almost all mental health disorders has largely been removed. Now, not entirely. I mean, we used to always joke around, not joke, but sort of lament the fact at Novartis that a parent would never give a kid Ritalin, but they'd give them Concerta. It's the same drug. So there is still a stigma with certain mental health disorders, but I think we're getting better. And I think as more and more of that stigma goes away, more awareness of ADHD, anxiety, depression, really depression especially, those three things gets more ingrained in the fact that there is help out there, that there are alternatives. And again, I'm the last person to say, look, go right to drugs. I truly am. I don't ever want anyone to be prescribed our medications or any medication if they do not need it and if it will not help and benefit their lives. So I do have a lot of faith in that. And what we're trying to do is take great products and make them much, much, much better. Simplify patients' lives, make it so that their drugs are optimized, so that their treatment's optimized, and they have better outcomes. At the end of the day, if they're just having an easier day or just not as bad, that's okay. But if we can make them truly better, that's our goal. And that's exactly what we're shooting to do in ADHD and anxiety for our first starters.
Well, I can't wait to see it all come to fruition. I know it is a lifetime's worth of work, certainly an adult lifetime's worth of work and nonstop every single day. So again, I want to encourage everybody to listen to the audio version of the podcast. You'll get a little bit of everything in it in terms of kind of a sneak peek of how this all works in Shane's industry, but also a lot in leadership and so much more. Again, Shane, thanks so much for spending time.
Joel, it was a blast. Thanks a lot.